everyone. A very warm welcome to another exciting episode of Psychology Talks. And in today's episode, we're going to discuss about the servant leadership. And I like this style of leadership a lot because this is the kind of leadership which creates like the excellent impact, the long-lasting impact, and this is the style when you think more about how to serve people, how to help them more than anything, more beyond yourself. Like when leader intends to serve their team, they think beyond their self-interest, and that is how they actually create impact that that leaves a legacy. And that's exactly we're going to talk about that what are the ways you can actually adopt this leadership style, how it can help your organization to grow, and what are the uh, what are the misconceptions or what are the uh, things that are related to it which are not true and which are the myths that we need to burst and to find out what exactly is servant leadership. And that's why I have invited one of the esteemed guests, and I'm so privileged to have him today. His name is Robert Seeger. He is a true visionary in this field of true servant leadership. He has been leading technology in one of the organization, and he has a wealth of experience as a CIO, as ERP, cloud system expert, team builder, and he has been like doing a lot of innovation, bringing a change in his company. So he has earned a reputation of turning an ordinary team into high performers through the power of leadership, through the power of his servant leadership. And throughout his career, Robert has demonstrated a remarkable ability to lead with empathy, inspire innovation, and drive meaningful change within organization. So, without further ado, let's welcome Robert Seeger. Hello,
Thank
Robert.
you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Brian. It's so nice to see you again. I always enjoy our conversations. And
Likewise.
I appreciate the very kind and verbose welcome as well too.
It
Appreciate
is
that.
very brief, actually, very short because I want you to actually take us through your life journey because I know that you have been in the field of like technology and you've been leading lots of teams through the style of servant leadership. Whereas I know the fact that you have been suffering from like incurable disease, which is MS, and uh, it takes a toll on you, of course, because it's not easy uh, to actually deal with this kind of illness and still think or still put your people first. So it is your greatness to serve your dream, and I think that's kind of the passion when everyone needs to actually when they need to lead the team. So I would want you to actually enlighten our audience today about your life journey. What are your struggles and how do you deal with it? So
Ye-
like they get to
Yes,
know more about you.
of course. Thank you. I appreciate that, and it's very kind. Yeah, I think the best place to start is I've been very blessed in my career. Right, early on in my career, I mean, my education is not in technology. Right, my education is English and literature. Um, I was I was going to be the next great novelist.
Wow.
And excuse me, when I stutter, sometimes that's my MS talking. So I'll try to talk very um, uh, purposely so that I can speak through that.
Sure.
Anyway, so early on, it was probably the late '80s. Um, Amazon was just a, a marker drawing on a sheet in the back of Jeff Bezos's garage, and he was just selling books online at that point.
Wow.
Um, and a friend of mine was creating these custom reports for the financial services industry, and he wanted to build an ERP package. ERP is Enterprise Resource Planning, right? It's the back
Mhm.
of an
Yes.
organization, and you can give him a can of Mountain Dew and turn on Star Trek, and he can code to no end, but he didn't understand business process. And at the time, I was in manufacturing and as a sales guy, basically.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so he asked me to help him architect the product from a business perspective, and that's kind of how I jumped into technology. He taught me a lot of what I needed to know. We built up this product, we sold it, and made some fantastic money on it. And from there, I went to other companies because I had internet experience that nobody else had at that point, right? Business and
Mhm.
internet technology experience.
Yes.
And I worked for a couple of CIOs that are no longer around because they were my age back when I was young, uh, but that were amazing mentors. And that really is what inspired me to be as much of a servant leader, much of a mentor as possible as I started to progress through my career, right, and start to build teams. So I always took that knowledge that I gained from these mentors, and it's always inspired me to be a mentor as well too. Now, along the way, in 1998, I was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis, right? And it impacts people many, many, many different ways. I mean, one person, a person in my one of my support groups that I belong to, literally went blind while he was at a stoplight driving his car. For me, it impacts my ability to stand sometimes. My legs get really weak. Um, my face is all numb. It impacts my speech, and it impacts my ability to hold things, right? And it kind of ebbs and flows, right? Uh,
Mhm.
I have medication that has slowed the progress of it, but it's certainly there's no cure for it. But again, I like to think that I'm blessed because I'm even though I may drop something now and then, even though I may stutter or slur every now and then, or I'm feeling too weak to stand, I just have to sit in my chair all day long. I'm still able to walk. I'm still able to live and breathe within this world. So I feel very blessed on that, and I think that's important when you're leading others. That's how you lead by example, right? You work through whatever challenge
Yeah.
you have to work through because you want to be there for them, right? You
Yeah.
want to be there to help them through whatever it is that they're going through. And I think the one blessing that MS has brought to me is that it's helped me understood the challenges that all the teams that I've ever worked with, what they're going through as well too, right?
Yeah.
Too many leaders out there think within the four walls of their organization. And I'm telling you that you cannot think that way. You have to think outside of those four walls of that organization because that's where your team members come from. There's always going to be something happening in the background of their lives that's going to impact the way that they work for you, right? And until
Yeah.
you build relationships with those team members and until you begin to understand and empathize with the problems that they're facing, with the challenges that they're facing, or even with the life challenges that they're facing, right? Only then can you help them excel in their career and excel for the team that you're trying to build. I've
Yeah.
so that's the one thing that I take from my own personal struggle with MS, right?
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, your story, I mean, especially like the way you started, you said that you were there with the internet and then you actually and it's amazing to know that you have your qualification in English literature, and I really like the fact that you mentioned you wanted to write a novel, because that's one of my goal as well. I actually, when I started writing my first book, I actually wanted to write fiction, and then I decided, no, I think I should write non-fiction first, and then I will write a novel, because writing a novel is definitely a different thing. And but I really like to actually uh, use the imagination in a
Hmm.
different way, and it's much more fun actually
Yeah.
instead of writing a non-fiction book, because non-fiction book is more like research and kind of a dry stuff, and like whereas fiction, like you can like have your imagination go wild and you can do a lot of things. So yes, that's my goal as well. Someday I will write my novel as well.
Yeah, and I've been working on the same novel now for about 15 years, so
Wow.
it's going to get there.
Quite similar. Yeah, I
Yeah.
spent 20 years to actually write my first book. I saw it on you when I was actually going through your profile that there's some kind of the episodes you have on Amazon, right?
Yeah,
About
yeah, on
that.
Kindle.
Oh,
Yeah, you can actually buy chapters on Villa. I haven't finished it yet, but I thought if I did that, that would incent me to keep working on it to finish it finally. I mean, I'm just
yeah.
about there. So yeah, yeah,
I
it's
I
there.
think yeah you should do that and yeah work on that and I actually one of my mentor I of course I'm sure you know Roger Brooks, and he was also
Mhm.
writing on the he was also working on the novel, and I told him as well when I was working with him that I want to write a novel as well and I will write it. I have kind of story, but it's still not the way it should be. So anyway, as I'm working on it, let's say maybe next 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
that's all you could do. I mean, you have to take advantage of the time that you get when the
yeah.
inspiration strikes you. I mean, if you want to become a, I everybody knows this. I mean, I've read, I'm a voracious reader. I read your book and I love it.
Mhm.
Changed my life.
Thank
Read
you.
your son's book, which was amazing
Oh,
too for a young
thank
man.
you.
Um,
Yeah,
but in in order to do anything like that, you have to really dedicate a lot of time to it. And
absolutely.
for me, I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the company I work for. I enjoy the team that I manage. Um, and when I come home at night, I enjoy being with my family. So
Yeah,
I suppose I could dedicate myself to 8 hours a day of writing, 4 or 5 hours a day of writing, but I just haven't yet because I have other priorities.
yeah.
Um, I'm thinking when I retire, that's probably when I'm going to,
Yeah, as you
I'll be
said, that
late in
it
life
when
for
the
that.
inspiration strikes, or when you just decide that you have to write down. And I tell you, just since although we are drifting from the subject, but I would just tell you that when I started writing my first book, I mean, because although I decided that I will write in 20 years or something, yet I was not able to write because, as you mentioned, that we need to actually dedicate some time, and we need to spend some time on it, and we need to break the normal routine to work on that. And then actually I read the novel of Paulo Coelho, the Zahir, and when I actually read that, that gave me inspiration. I said, okay, now I have to write it. And that moment, I think sometimes you need to wait for that moment to occur, and then it will give you inspiration to whatever like you want to do in your life. It's not only linked with writing, it could be anything. Like if you want to start a business, if you want to do anything, that particular moment when the inspiration is strike, that is
Yeah.
the moment that you decide that yes, I want to do it, and then you go for it.
Yeah, and and that actually is to the point of our discussion here on servant leadership too, right? Part of building
Yeah,
relationships with your team is understanding what some of those aspirations are for your team members, right?
yeah,
Because I'm almost certain that anybody coming into a job, into an office, their aspiration is not just to go ahead and file paper every day, right? They want to do something else beyond that. They have other dreams, and unless as a leader you don't take that opportunity to learn about what they want as far as their dreams are concerned, and you don't support them, and you don't become actively engaged in helping them, they're not going to perform for you, right? They're not going to
yeah,
perform for the organization. i have
yeah.
um, I have a particular person who works for me now that the family has a farm,
Hmm.
and they
Yeah,
want to be able to spend time on that farm, nurturing that farm, building that farm up, right? In certain times a year, she needs to be on the tractor,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I support her 100%. Gave her a
Yeah.
little hotspot so that she can have Wi-Fi on the tractor, so that we can still communicate,
Yeah.
right? Because she said
Yeah.
it's so compelling. So it's things like that, that I had another team member at a past position who was very interested in project management,
Hmm.
right? And wanted to eventually be a project management consultant,
Right.
right? Which means she would have left the organization. But I said, okay, if that's what you want, let's get you that. Let's tailor your role around project management, and let's get you certified. And the organization paid for it, got her that way, and then 5 years later, she's her own consultant now for project
Yeah.
management.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
and we shouldn't be afraid. And that, I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
A lot of leaders hold too tightly onto their teams, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't want to have to replace them.
Hmm.
But I would argue that the more freedom that you give them, right, the
Hmm.
more support that you give them outside of their roles,
Yeah.
the more likely they're there to stay with you, because they feel that connection. They feel that support. They understand that you're giving to them so they can give back into the organization. And that, I think that's where you get successful. Um, you know, I have walked into so many teams over the course of my career where the previous person that was leading that team was that command and control,
Yeah.
right? And that just creates a toxic culture.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you brought in such valid points here, and you're so apt on saying that the leader should never be afraid of, being replaced by the team members,
Mm-hmm.
because that shows their insecurities. And when actually, when someone have the team member who are actually more or capable in from them, it is the time to actually create better bond, and to have, like, understanding where they can learn, like the leader can learn from them, and then
Mm-hmm.
the leader can give them more freedom, as you mentioned, freedom, and the leader can empower them to perform on their own. And you brought in, I mean, these are amazing insights that you brought in. And I feel that that is the main dilemma that is happening these days, which creates toxicity in the environment, that leaders get afraid that,
Right.
they
Yeah.
they think that they can be their role will be finished because uh, the team members will take over their role, and
Yeah.
that should
Yeah.
never. Yeah.
A very good friend of mine, another author, Colonel Alan Landry, wrote
Mhm.
a book about mentorship and mentoring, right?
Yeah.
And he also created a workbook around it, around mentorship
Wow.
and mentoring. Actually, I had him on my own podcast that I do.
Okay.
And one of the things that he talks about, which I think is amazing, is that when you're mentoring, right, you are also being mentored. The
Yes.
mentor is being mentored, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always room to learn. And what's important is that you're treating the person that you're mentoring as if they were your mentor as well, too, right?
Mhm.
Because it's a two-way street, so to speak, right? As much
Yeah.
as you're giving to them, they want to give to you, and you have to be willing to receive that. In fact, you have to
Mhm.
encourage them to give that to you.
Yeah.
And you do that through positive reinforcement. You do that through speaking back what they've taught you, so they know that they're everybody likes to teach what they know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you should never be afraid of that. And in fact, I have always, at every team that I've ever been at, I take my time and I identify that one person that I think should take over for me,
Hmm.
could take my
Yeah.
job, and I encourage them to. I think that's important.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm not creating the next person, the next Bob, so to speak, I'm not doing my job properly then. right? We
Yeah.
shouldn't have to be pushing back or worrying about people that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? The thing is, the more like those insecure leaders, if they try to hold their position, it's somehow they're actually, that means they're creating the boundaries around themselves. That means that
Mhm.
they will be stuck in the role and they won't be able to move forward. Because when we start training for example, for the next anyone in line for us, that means that we are also planning for our future, because that means we know that we are not going to stay in this role forever. That means we need to think that we move forward. And the best way, I always say, the best way to actually grow is to actually by giving, by sharing.
Mhm.
You share your knowledge, when you share your whatever you have, when you share your love, it increases manifold by, and that's what happened. I think in servant leadership also, it is true that the more you give, the actually more you get.
Yeah, yep.
So that's the main philosophy. I feel that that applies to servant leadership, and that is why it makes it more impactful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things too that most servant leaders worry about are not just within their own teams, but within teams that they interact with as well too,
Yes.
right? So it's reaching through those doors, reaching across those boundaries. I've been in plenty of organizations where each department is isolated within itself,
Yeah.
and each process, each person within that department are all kind of like huddled together with their own little shields up because they don't want to get in trouble for this, they don't want to get in trouble for that, they don't want to cross boundaries here or there. Where I'm kind of the exact opposite, right?
Yeah.
I go into all the departments, right? I try to get to know everybody there and offer our help here. We're here to help you. We're here to support you. We're here to make your job better. What can I do for you? What can I do for you? Because I think that that's what builds a better, more cohesive organization, all told.
Yeah.
There's a great influencer on LinkedIn, Chad Gono.
Hmm.
Highly recommend checking him out. That's the
Okay.
type, he leads an organization. They're a
Hmm.
plastics manufacturer. He leads an organization just that way. He and I
Yeah.
engage all the time on the platform because we have a lot of the same philosophies, right? He's a CEO and an owner that anyone could approach at any time, and he's out there, and he amazingly he doesn't. It's a large company, and I think he knows almost everyone by name,
Yeah.
right? And because he gets out there, with them to talk to them. The company I'm with right now, it's only been a short time. I don't know everybody by name yet, but I'm getting close.
Oh, that's great. Okay, I want to actually ask basically in this that we hear a lot about the toxic leadership and something, but there are also some challenges in leading team. Like, I understand that it is always the leaders who actually drive the culture. But what about the toxic employees as well, who don't want to
Yeah.
to give, and to actually they always want to be pampered by the leader? Because I understand that as a leader, people are actually taught that they need to serve the team. But what about the team members, that if you're giving them but you're not receiving back? So how to deal with those kind of things?
Yeah, that's always probably I would say that's my throughout my career, that's always been my biggest challenge, especially
Yeah.
when stepping into, like I have recently, into a more mature team, right? Where the members have been there for dozens of years, right?
Hmm.
And their behavior and the way they do things has been tolerated for the same over those dozens of years. And now those expectations change because the leader
Yeah,
changes a little bit and opens
absolutely.
things up, and they have a hard time. So in the past, the way I've always done it is, you can't expect to come in and change someone's course
Yeah.
if they've been doing it this way for 25 years within the course of 90 days, whatever the case is, right?
Yeah.
So I think the way that I've done it in the past is through example, right?
Yeah.
Where you don't really want to tell them, just, this is what I command you to do. You don't want that. So you go out and you just do it for them. So for example, someone from the VP of sales comes in and says, I can't use this whatever item that is, and the support person that's been there for so many years says, well, this is our process, this is what we do, stick with it. And that's where someone like me should step in and say, okay, what do you need? What, let's talk about that. And then let's get him what he needs. And the other person just sits back and looks, and they start realizing, hey, I can actually step out of my box to take that step forward. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's so as servant leaders, we have to go out there, and we actually have to get out there and lead by example as well, and do some of the things that we need to do as a way to illustrate a better way or the way it should be done. And
Yeah, I think, yeah,
but there will come a point though where you know a particular person may not change, no matter how
yeah.
much you try to convince them, and no matter how much you try to get personal with them, no matter how much you try to take them by hand and you know
Mhm.
get them involved and teach and mentor and stuff like that. Then you have to make an unfortunate decision, I think, at that point. But I think until you've exhausted everything that you could possibly do to give that individual the opportunity to turn around, um,
Mhm.
you got to do everything you can.
Yeah, I think that's really true, and that we can do to a certain extent. But if the other person is not willing to change, you cannot change them by force. So
No, you
that's
can't.
very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. So we talk about like these kind of challenges that we can face, but there are misconceptions also link with the servant leadership. That basically that it's not all like when you keep on giving. I mean, that's the philosophy that we get, that the more you give, the more you get, but it's not always work that way. And there's also misconception that, like, you shouldn't give that much in order, because in any case, uh, the more you give, definitely it has like more spiritual benefit, but a lot of like misconception attached to it. So how do you tackle those kind of things when people say that it wouldn't work, you need to stop doing this? It's not, because servant leadership is all about like helping people, thinking for them. But again, we need to, maybe you can say that there is one misconception that you should not do that, but there's also a reality that there is, like, you may also get exhausted, right? So you may
Right.
need some boundaries as well. So how do you tackle those problems, especially when we talk about servant leadership?
Yeah, well, so boundaries are really important when you're talking about servant leadership, right? Because
Yeah.
there's only so much that you can give, and at some point,
Yeah.
you're either going to have to step away for a second, or you have to learn how to say no. I mean, there are things that you have to say no to, right? And that you can do in an empathetic, you can do in an open and almost, I hate to use the word cheerful because no is never cheerful, but you can do it in a cheerful manner, right?
Yeah.
And you could
Yeah.
do it no with an explanation of, you know, no, and this is why, right?
Yeah.
I think where people get into the problem of saying no is because I said so. No, because I
Yeah.
said so is not a reason. You
Yeah.
give them the business justification or the personal justification, right? Of
Mhm.
why you're saying no. Maybe the no is budgetary,
Yeah.
right? Maybe the no is because we're going to take a different direction, and let's talk it out. Let's understand why that no is being said, or even that boundary, why that boundary is being put up.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, a lot of servant leaders think that they have to be accessible 24/7.
Yeah.
I am not, right? So
Yeah.
when my day ends, I don't
Hmm.
look at my email anymore. I don't answer messages unless it's an emergency text, which we have a code that we put in. We say, okay, if this is an emergency and I get that text, I'm going to answer it. But if I get a text for anything else, I'm not going to answer it until the next morning. So we
Yeah.
set up boundaries for ourselves so that we can have lives. And
Yeah.
by doing that, it makes our work lives that much more robust because we know we need to make every second rich and important and valued.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it creates more understanding also of the team, that, what values, and it is also respecting each other, because,
Mhm.
it's not like, if somebody is like willing to work for us, that doesn't mean that we have access to their lives 24/7. So we
Ooh,
need
yeah.
to just basically realize this fact that they have other responsibilities, they have other life other than work as well. And when we create that kind of respect and understanding, I think our relationship gets more stronger and develops in a much meaningful way. So I think that helps in several ways. So
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely. I think and it really is important, and it helps build the relationship,
yeah,
right? When we begin to understand each other's boundaries, when we begin to understand each other's feelings about what we're doing
yeah,
and how we do things, it just creates an awareness and an openness and a closeness that allows us to work together. And that's really where you get the high performance coming in, right? Because
yeah,
you have a team that's not only physically in sync, right? Not only mentally in sync, but emotionally in sync.
yeah,
Once you hit that, that's when things start to really kind of tick,
yeah.
and we begin to understand our cues. I have a couple of people
Hmm.
um, where when I'm talking to them, I can see something going on, and I know to ask, "Are you okay?" I know what questions to bring out to help them out, and
Yeah.
when they see that or when they feel that, it just makes them even more dedicated to what they have to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I really love that when you said that if the team has to be emotionally in sync, because, no matter what, like logically, rationally, people can understand that, this is the way they're doing this, that is why they're doing the work, and they need to work because of their to survive in this world. But, people feel more loyal when they are connected with others through emotions. So I think that's the key point when to develop more meaningful relationship through understanding, empathy, and like through emotions.
Yep.
So, anyways, like I know we can go on this topic, but I'm afraid the time is running out. So, before we actually close the show, what one advice would you like to give to our audience today to practice servant leadership?
Yeah, I think as long as you could put the needs of your teams and their personal needs and professional needs in front of your own, you're going to be successful, right? I think that's what's important. Everything that you should be doing as a servant leader should be about what's going to help your team members, because those
Yeah,
are the guys and girls and men and women that are going to pull you across that goal post, right? They're going to help you
yeah,
get everything done. So you've got to put their needs first above yours. And if you can remember that, I think that will definitely make you successful. And when you do that, you're going to get that emotional connection, right? Because
yeah,
you're going to start understanding what those needs are. Because needs, I this, your needs fall on all kinds of different psychological levels, right? So
yeah.
when you connect from that level there, you're going to make it work.
Yeah, yeah, amazing advice. Yeah, definitely. Because mostly this, yeah, servant leadership is all about definitely uh, thinking beyond their self needs. However, like people do get selfish. They think that
Oh yeah.
they're, and that's also it's perfectly fine because we are all human. That sometimes we
Yep.
feel. But the thing is that when you are in a leadership role, you need to think beyond your self-interest, and that is the that is the only way one can create more impact, or the true impact that can
Yeah.
leave a lasting impression on others and on in the society. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, what is the best way? What is the best medium? I know you're very active on LinkedIn. Any other way that
Yeah,
we can?
LinkedIn's good. LinkedIn's very good, or you can hit me up on X at Art Seeger. All those good things, but LinkedIn's probably the best. I'm on there the most. I have a YouTube channel, and I don't have a public Facebook. I have a private Facebook because it's just to watch the grandkids. But
Yeah.
LinkedIn is the best. Yeah, I'm
Okay, that's
happy to
great.
speak to anyone, and support anyone that I can.
Okay.
Because so many people support me. I mean, if you can't, my background's blurred, but I'm working from home today.
Yeah.
because I've been having struggling a little bit with my MS, and my
Oh,
team was very gracious about not, about me working from home. They stay in
yeah.
contact with me, they check on me all the time, and we've built that relationship up with the team in just a few months.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And that if you have that kind of team who supports you at this time, you feel so appreciated and
Yeah.
valued that you may not want to leave them. I mean, you just want to work with them because you feel good. It's not
Mm.
for any other reason. And that is a wonderful feeling, I'm sure.
It
So
is.
thank you so much for joining us today, sharing those wonderful insights, sharing your journey. And I know despite all your struggles, you managed to, show up you show up for others on LinkedIn, and and you do a lot of things to help others, which is amazing, like, and knowing that you have your own struggle. So it's an honor to actually know you, to have your support, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and it's been my honor as well. Your
Yes,
book is my
thank
favorite
you.
book, and
Thank you so much. Thank you.
okay.
I don't know why there's actually some the comments are not basically showing up. So maybe I'll just comment on all those people who have shared their comment on LinkedIn or on any other platform after the show. So thanks to all those who joined us live, and I'm gonna get back to you after finishing this show. Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank
bye
you.
bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.